We have sticks and we get to beat people with them. That's what I said when my mom picked me up for my first lacrosse practice. I was in 2nd grade and a big hockey lover looking for a summer sport. I knew I found it after the first practice. Lacrosse is the first known sport played in the United States by the Native Americans. It is interesting to see how it really changed over the years and become an organized sport over the years. The sport of lacrosse was made popular by the Native Americans. It quickly became one of the most popular sports played in Minnesota. I have enjoyed playing the sport since 2nd grade. I have become intrigued by the history and the rules of the sport over the years. By the time I got to high school, I was a multi-sport athlete, playing hockey, football, along with lacrosse. But by my freshman year, lacrosse became my favorite sport, so I decided to quit all my other sports and focus on my dream of playing college lacrosse. First, I will discuss the history of lacrosse. Second, I will discuss the rules and the equipment you need to play lacrosse. Third, I will finally discuss the popularity of lacrosse in Minnesota. Lacrosse was first reported as being played in the 1400s. According to SportsKnowsHow.com, lacrosse began with Native American tribes. They were the Iroquois, the Arlong, and the Huron. The Federation of Lacrosse reports that the game was initially played in the St. Lawrence Valley area by the Arlong tribe. The sport spread. Other tribes quickly picked it up in the eastern half of North America and the western Great Lakes area. The name of the sport evolved over the years according to SportsKnows.com. The original game was Begadaway. The Federation of Lacrosse also reports the sport one time being called stickball. A French Jesuit missionary, Jean de Brebeuf, who worked in the St. Lawrence Valley in 1630, was the first European to see the game being played. He named the game lacrosse. At the time, lacrosse was played over a lengthy distance, loosely among the tribes. Very limited equipment was needed. According to SportsKnows.com, goals were as far as 500 yards to a mile apart. There were no sidelines boundaries to limit the playing area. Teams had between 100 to 10,000 players trying to move either a wood or deerskin ball filled with fur, the sticks past the opponent's goal. Rules were the players cannot touch the ball with their hands. Again, there was no boundaries. Players would use 3 to 4 foot long sticks with small nets made from deer, snow, or on the end to pass and catch the ball. Lacrosse did have a spiritual meaning. To start the match, there would be a face-off. The players would put their sticks to the sky and ask for God's attention. The ball would then be thrown into the air and the players would race to catch it. Games were played for several reasons. It was believed games toughened young warriors to get them ready for war, as well as recreation and religious reasons. Now that I have discussed the history of the sport, I will discuss the current rules and equipment needed for lacrosse. The rules and equipment have came a long way since the Native American games. Currently, the game has changed since the Native Americans played. First, there are boundaries for playing. The standard lacrosse field is 100 yards in length from each sideline to sideline, 60 yards in width from each sideline. Field lacrosse are centered between each sideline positions 15 yards. From each end line, 80 yards apart from each other. In field lacrosse, there are 10 players on a team, 3 attacking, 3 middies, 3 defense, and 1 goalie. When you move to college lacrosse, there are a couple minor rule changes, but the biggest one is the shot clock. Also, for professional lacrosse, there's a 2-point line. So if you shoot the ball behind the 2-point line and it goes in, you get 2 points instead of the usual 1. In order for a lacrosse player to be in compliance with their equipment needs, each player must have the following: a helmet, gloves, elbow pads, and shoulder pads, and a stick and mouth guard. Goalies can also must wear like a neck guard to cover their neck in case they get hit, and they can wear other equipment, but it's not mandatory. As you can imagine, the sport of lacrosse has become a moneymaker for companies like Brian Warrior, Epic, and other industries manufacturing and selling equipment. Lacrosse sticks have two parts to the stick: the shaft and then the head. Most shafts are made out of titanium or metal, but they have started making carbon fiber shafts. The head of the shaft is where the net is located, and there are multiple ways to string it. This is just all mesh stick, but Native Americans used to use traditional string, which is a mix of leather and mesh strings. Most lacrosse players use mesh strings just because it's easier to maintain them. Even the lacrosse ball has changed since the days of playing with the deerskin. According to NCAA Section 17, starting in 2000, the ball shall be white, yellow, or orange due to what level or if you're a guy or girl. It's a solid rubber ball with 7 3/4 to 8 inch in circumference, between 5 and 5.5 ounces in weight. When dropping from the height of a 72-inch concrete, it will bounce 43 to 51 inches at a temperature of 65 degrees Fahrenheit. The regulation ball varies. Women use yellow balls, men's use white, and then professional use orange. Now that we have learned about the rules of lacrosse needed to play, I will discuss the popularity of lacrosse in Minnesota. Lacrosse has become very popular in Minnesota and has evolved over the past 15 years. Lacrosse was introduced to Minnesota by the Native Americans, but it made a comeback in 1981. Carleton College was the first college club team to form in Minnesota, starting in 1981. According to the history of men's lacrosse, by 2011, there were 17 men's lacrosse teams formed in Minnesota. Lacrosse isn't just popular with men's lacrosse. As of 2011, there were 16 women's lacrosse teams formed in MM. According to the Youth Association of Minnesota, in 2015, over 78 teams and 1,700 players from 3rd to 8th grade from across the state participated in the youth championships. According to MN-Lax, there are 71 high school sanctions teams playing in Minnesota State High School League. There are an additional 36 boys high school teams that play in the NBSL League. The NBSL League is for high school teams who are not sanctioned by the Minnesota State High School League. The popularity and love of the game has grown so much that kids want to play the sport of lacrosse year-round. While that is tough to do with all the snow that we get, you'll find more and more cities putting up domes that are hosting lacrosse clinics and winter leagues. In the summer, there are over 6 travel teams alone in the Twin Cities kids can try out for. If they make the team, they will be participating in tournaments nationwide. According to the Star Tribune, baseball has suffered the most as the youth are beginning to pick up lacrosse over baseball for spring and summer activities. The Egan Athletic Association has had a decline in its youth baseball numbers with the rival sport of lacrosse. I personally have played on 3 different travel teams throughout my high school career. I also played for Eden Prairie High School, where we were back-to-back state champions. Another interesting fact about the love of the sport: in Eden Prairie, many alumni come back to coach in the summer, which is done on their free time. In conclusion, today I discussed the history of lacrosse. Second, I discussed the rules and equipment needed to play. Finally, I discussed the popularity and love of the sport in Minnesota. Lacrosse was made popular by the Native Americans. It quickly became one of the most popular sports in Minnesota. Lacrosse is a really fun game that continues to evolve and become more popular. It is a sport that both men and women, girls and boys can all participate in and love. Whether it is played or watching a game at youth all the way up to professional lacrosse, I guarantee you throughout the year you can find a place to watch or play lacrosse in Minnesota.